FanDuel has the Toronto Blue Jays with the worst odds to win the American League East. Yankees are the favorites. Last time Toronto won their division back in 2015. Last year, the Jays were in the basement of the AL East with a record of 74-88. Speaking of FanDuel, it's time for the FanDuel presented segment, Tats, with our sports betting analyst, Todd Fuhrman. Great to see you, Todd. You know, I don't need to remind you, my friend, that Canada has done pretty well against the Americans lately in various sports. Four Nations face-off, third place game of the CONCACAF Nations League in Los Angeles over the weekend.
I can't hear you, Jay. I can't hear you. So
well,
I can't hear you.
Here's the good news, Todd. Here's the good news. I am not as confident in Canada's lone Major League Baseball team dominating America's national pastime. I'm not quite as confident in that. The Jays did win the Grapefruit League, so that's something. But what do you think about FanDuel having them with an over-under win total of 79.5? You going over or you going under?
So what you're telling me, Jay, is that Major League Baseball needs to bring back the Montreal Expos to try and drive up Canada's prospects to compete for a World Series title in 2025. But you mentioned the win total at 79.5, and I think it's a lofty expectation given what the Jays have in front of them. You just showed the graphic that has them the fifth favorite at the bottom of the totem pole within the American League East. And I have some major questions about this pitching staff. I think if the Jays are going to surprise, they're going to need to get Max Scherzer to contribute 150 innings and kind of look like vintage Max Scherzer. They're going to need somebody else to step up in that middle of the lineup, because if Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. aren't producing at the top, going to create some real problems. But the one thing I do disagree with when you look at the landscape in that division, the Yankees, in my opinion, shouldn't be the favorite given all the injury concerns that they're facing. I actually would feel more comfortable betting against my Yankees to even make the playoffs, and that's available at a price right around 2-1.
Todd, there wasn't a lot of madness on the opening weekend of the NCAA tournament. 7 of the 8 1 and 2 seeds remain. Duke is still the favorite. Last week you said Duke should be the favorite. But to watch out for Houston. How are you feeling going into the Sweet 16?
I mean, look, the Blue Devils didn't disappoint in their first 2 games of the tournament, almost like glorified dress rehearsals and dispatching their first-round opponent, following it up with a dominant performance and cover in the process against the Baylor Bears. And you look at what Duke has done down the stretch. Yes, they feasted on lightweights. They're the only remaining team from the ACC in the field. And I'm not sure that Arizona is necessarily going to push them. Houston's been dealt a difficult hand. We said they could have their hands full against Gonzaga in the round of 32. They ended up slipping by the Zags there, and they're going to play a de facto road game against Purdue. And regardless of who comes out of that Tennessee or Kentucky game, I think Houston has their work cut out for them. But I'm not jumping off Kelvin Sampson's bandwagon right now. I think Houston finds a way to punch their ticket to the Final Four. Cougs were my pick before the tournament started, and I'm not going to do an about face at this juncture.
On the women's side, devastating blow for USC. The presumptive 2027 first overall WNBA draft pick, Juju Watkins, tears her ACL. She's gone. Paige Beckers in UConn, they're now the favorite. Are you a big believer in the presumptive 2025 first overall WNBA pick, Paige Beckers and UConn, to win it all?
I mean, Jay, look, you mentioned the injury to Juju. And while I don't ever condone violence, if that happened in an NHL game, that wouldn't have created a bench-clearing brawl, but you would have sent out your enforcer to try and make things right. So in my opinion, a little bit of a cheap play there, and you hate to see a superstar sideline, mainly because of the storylines we could have seen in the region with a potential UCLA-USC showdown. But I think the folks at FanDuel have the favorites right, and I don't see a ton of value in either UConn or South Carolina. You mentioned the men's tournament not offering much in the way of madness, and the women's tournament, in my opinion, won't have a Cinderella story. So I think both of those teams priced correctly. And sometimes in this business, Jay, the best bets we make are the bets we don't make at all. But I would love to see UConn and South Carolina meet with a lot more to play for deeper into this tournament.
Sometimes the best bets we make are the bets we don't make at all. I'm looking forward to a future edition of Todd's Odds where you just tell us not to bet on anything, buddy.
Hey, I'm not sure we're going to quite get that far, but I do like to preach a little bit of discipline. And you know what? This offseason, maybe I'll have to look to publish a book of sports betting poetry available coming directly to you in ebook only.
I love it. And I love that idea very much. Todd Fuhrman, always entertaining. Thank you for this, my friend. The women's tournament continues on Friday. The men are back in action on Thursday. Sweet 16. Duke and Florida continuing their quest for a national title that night in separate games. You heard Todd talk about it, Cooper flagging Duke against Arizona. He doesn't believe in the Wildcats. No one does. Coverage begins at 7 Eastern.